That kind of peace pulls the rug out from under him. He thought he had power when he had your attention, your reactions, your emotional energy. But now he's left wondering, why isn't she angry? Why isn't she chasing me? Why does she seem free? And that's when it hits. You've moved on. You've found something bigger than his validation. You've found yourself. Choosing peace doesn't mean you weren't hurt. It means you chose yourself in the aftermath. You respected yourself enough not to hand over your joy to someone who mishandled it. You trusted that real love, real worth, would never demand your dignity in exchange. And when you do that, you become untouchable. You become the kind of woman who's no longer driven by the need to be seen by someone who refused to see her in the first place. Because you're too busy healing, too busy rediscovering happiness that doesn't revolve around someone else's approval. And here's what rattles him most. When he sees you at peace, when he realizes you didn't collapse without him, it shakes him. Because men expect to be missed. They expect you to break. They think they'll come back one day and find you still waiting, still hoping, still hurting. But when all they find is silence, no calls, no messages, no signs that you're even thinking about them, it breaks something inside them. Because now they know you're gone, truly gone. And not just physically, but emotionally, mentally, spiritually gone. He doesn't see desperation. He doesn't see pain. He sees a woman who chose her peace over his presence. And that's a loss no man is ready to accept. Because now he's the one haunted by the what ifs, by the silence, by the life you're building without him. While he's waiting for you to crumble, you're rising. While he's hoping for a sign, you're living so fully that he becomes an afterthought in a story he no longer belongs to. And by the time he finally understands what he lost, what he mishandled, it's too late. Because you've built a life so beautiful, so grounded, so full of your own light, that whether or not he regrets it doesn't even matter anymore. That's the power of walking away without a word. That's the power of silence. It forces him to feel what you no longer need to say. And in that space, he'll remember you, not for the noise, not for the tears, but for the strength it took to choose yourself. Because the woman who chooses peace doesn't just move on, she becomes unforgettable. She was already gone, long before he even noticed what he'd lost. And that's the kind of realization that shakes a man to his core. It's not her absence that stings the most. It's the truth that she was never just an option. She was the opportunity. And while he was busy taking her presence for granted, assuming she'd always be there, she was quietly reclaiming her power. She didn't beg. She didn't plead. She didn't waste another ounce of energy trying to convince him she was worth loving. She just stopped, walked away with dignity. Because deep down, a man often assumes he can come and go as he pleases. That even if he hurts her, she'll still be waiting. He counts on that silent forgiveness, on the softness he once saw in her eyes. And usually he's right, until she reaches the point where she's had enough. That's when the ground shifts. That's when the panic kicks in. Because a man who thinks he has time will always be careless. But once he senses that time's run out, that's when regret starts to weigh heavy on his chest. That's when he rewinds every memory, every moment, wishing he had done things differently. Suddenly, he sees her clearly, the way he should have from the start. But by then, she's gone. Not just physically, she's emotionally unreachable. No longer the woman hoping for his change of heart. She's grown, healed, elevated to a level far beyond his reach. And that's the irony. They don't come back when you cry, not when you argue, not when you try to make them understand. They come back when you no longer care, when your energy is yours again, when your peace becomes louder than your pain, when you stop chasing closure and start chasing your own growth. That's when it hits him. He misjudged you. But it's already too late, because the woman he took for granted has turned into a woman he could never have. Time has a way of showing us who's real and who was only passing through. And when you stop giving your time, your love, and your loyalty to someone who never valued it, you create space for someone who will. That's when everything begins to align. That's when you truly win. But one of the greatest traps people fall into after heartbreak is the belief that revenge will bring healing. That if they can make the other person feel just a fraction of their pain, it'll somehow bring peace. That if they show them what they lost, they'll finally feel whole again. But that's not healing. That's still holding on. That's still giving them power. You can dress it up however you want. Post the pictures, flirt with someone new, drop hints online. But all it shows is that they still affect you, that they still hold space in your mind. True detachment, real freedom, comes when you no longer need to prove anything. Not to them, not to anyone. Because the real flex is peace. Not out of weakness, not out of surrender, but out of strength. Because you know your energy is too sacred to waste on someone who never appreciated it. When you choose peace, you reclaim control. You stop letting someone else's choices define your worth. You walk away without bitterness, without trying to settle the score, because you know your future is worth more than your past. And let me tell you, nothing confuses someone who thought they could break you more than your silence. They expected chaos, a reaction, drama. But when you give them none of that, it shakes them. They start to wonder why you're not bitter, why you're not lashing out, why you seem lighter, freer, why you're glowing without them. And that's when it hits them. They never had as much power as they thought. Choosing peace doesn't mean you weren't hurt. It means you decided to rise above the hurt, that your healing mattered more than holding on to resentment. It means you understand that what's truly meant for you will never require you to shrink, to chase, to break yourself in half. It will meet you with the same energy, the same value, the same respect. And when you move like that, when you choose grace over revenge, calm over chaos, you don't just heal, you evolve. You step into a version of yourself that's unshakable. And that's a level not everyone can reach, but you did. When he did you wrong, he expected you to break. He counted on it. He was sure that you'd fall into the script he's seen before. Tears, pleading, long paragraphs he'll never finish reading. But what he never saw coming was your silence, your stillness, the power in your peace. Nothing rattles a man more than the absence of chaos when he knows he caused a storm. And yet there you are, unmoved, unbothered, untouched by his disrespect. Not because it didn't hurt, but because you chose not to let that pain shape your response. Men are trained by patterns. They're used to the emotional aftermath. They expect the shouting, the questioning, the need for closure. But when you offer none of that, when you refuse to perform the heartbreak he expects, that's when confusion sets in. You don't yell, you don't chase. You simply retreat into yourself, not out of defeat, but because you know that silence carries more truth than words ever could. He wanted control, and your reaction was supposed to hand it to him, but you didn't give him that satisfaction. Instead, you gave him distance. You gave him stillness. You gave him the chance to sit with the weight of what he did, with no distractions, no noise to comfort his ego. And in that silence, he hears the loudest message of all. He no longer has access to you. He calls, maybe even texts, expecting to pull you back in. But instead of begging or explaining, you thank him for the clarity and walk away. No dramatics, no second chances, just calm, quiet grace. And now he's the one spiraling. He's the one replaying everything in his head, trying to understand how the woman he once had a grip on became someone untouchable. Because here's the thing. When you don't try to prove your worth, that's when it shines the brightest. You know who you are. You know what you bring to the table. And you're no longer interested in convincing anyone to see it. That kind of confidence isn't loud, but it's undeniable. It radiates from within, and it shakes him more than any tear ever could. Men don't learn through lectures. They learn through absence, through consequences. When you stop explaining and start evolving, that's when the lesson lands. And it's not about revenge. It's not about making him hurt the way he hurt you. It's about rising, because staying low with him would mean shrinking yourself. And you've done enough of that already. So you pour into yourself. You work on your body, not for attention, but because it's yours and it deserves to be honored. You chase your goals with more fire than ever before, not to prove a point to him, but to fulfill a promise to yourself. You rebuild your life, piece by powerful piece, until it becomes a place he no longer fits into. And when he sees you now, he won't just see beauty, he'll see strength. He'll see peace. He'll see a woman who once gave him a chance, and then walked away without flinching when he blew it. And that will haunt him far more than any breakdown or fight ever could. You see, the glow up isn't for him to regret. It's for you to reclaim. It's for you to remember that you were always the prize. And losing you was his lesson to carry, not yours. Because the moment you stopped reacting and started rising, you became something he could never touch again. Not because you were cold, but because you finally realized your warmth was too precious to be wasted on someone who couldn't hold it with care. That's why when a man wrongs you, the strongest thing you can do isn't to shout, plead, or chase. It's to choose peace. Not the kind of peace that comes from avoidance or fear, but the kind that radiates from deep self-respect. Because peace unsettles the kind of man who expected chaos. He's bracing for an argument, prepared for emotional fireworks. But when you meet his disrespect with silence, with calm, it scrambles his sense of control. It makes him look inward, and that's the one place he never planned to go. He doesn't feel the weight of what he did while you're trying to explain it in long texts. He doesn't pause to think during loud confrontations. But when you stop responding, when you remove your presence, it echoes. It forces him to sit alone with the mess he created. And that silence is deafening. A man never forgets the woman who left with grace. Not the one who begged him to understand, not the one who fought to prove her worth, but the one who vanished from his life without a scene, letting her absence speak the loudest truth. There's nothing more powerful than the woman who simply walks away, unshaken, unbothered, because that kind of peace isn't passive. It's a declaration, a boundary, a message that says, I know who I am, and I don't need to fight for what's not meant for me.